The stars looked different from the observation deck of the Persistence. Ambassador Dae-jung stood with his hands clasped behind his back, watching the massive structure grow larger in the viewport. Nexus Prime, the capital of the Galactic Collective. 50 years of watching from the shadows, and finally, humanity had received an invitation to join. "It's bigger than the scan suggested," Ji-won said beside him. She was the chief xenobiologist, and her eyes sparkled with excitement. 300 levels, home to representatives from 847 species. Captain Hyun-sik approached from behind. His military uniform was crisp, but his face showed concern. "The docking authority is making us wait. They've cleared 6 other ships ahead of us, even though we had priority clearance." Dae-jung nodded slowly. He had learned patience in his years of diplomatic service. "We're the newcomers. Perhaps it's standard procedure." But it wasn't standard procedure. When they finally docked 4 hours later, no welcome committee waited for them. Instead, a small floating drone projected a holographic message directing them to Processing Station 7. Ji-won checked her datapad. Processing Station 7 was in the lower levels, usually reserved for cargo inspection. The processing took 6 hours. Officials scanned their credentials, asked the same questions repeatedly, and made them wait in sterile white rooms. Other species passed through quickly, receiving warm greetings and immediate clearance. Humans waited. Finally, they received their authorization badges. Dae-jung noticed the color immediately. Gray. Every other species he saw wore badges in colors ranging from gold to bright blue. He asked the official, a tall being with crystalline skin, about the color coding. "Gray is Tier 7, the official said without looking up from his screen. "Appropriate for your classification." "And what does Tier 7 indicate?" Dae-jung kept his voice calm. "Newly spacefaring species, limited technological development, minimal cultural significance." The official's tone suggested he was reading from a script he'd memorized long ago. "You may access public areas, attend council sessions as observers, and accept assigned duties. Your quarters are in Section 43. Section 43 turned out to be in the oldest part of the station. The corridors smelled of recycled air and old metal. Their assigned quarters were small, with basic furniture and dim lighting. Ji-won tried to remain optimistic. "At least we're here. We can prove ourselves." The inaugural council session was scheduled for the next day. Dae-jung spent the evening preparing his presentation. Humanity had much to offer. Medical techniques developed through centuries of fighting diseases, cultural exchange programs, defensive partnerships, technologies developed independently that might complement collective knowledge. The council chamber was vast. Hundreds of beings sat in curved rows rising up like an amphitheater. At the center, Council Prime Velthar presided. He was insectoid, with multiple eyes and mandibles that clicked when he spoke. His voice was translated into a dozen languages simultaneously. "We acknowledge the humans," Velthar announced. "Tier 7 members, recently arrived. You may present your petition." Dae-jung walked to the speaker's platform. He felt the weight of 800 species watching him. He spoke clearly, outlining humanity's proposals. Medical exchange programs that could save lives, cultural initiatives to foster understanding, technology sharing agreements. When he finished, silence filled the chamber. Then Velthar clicked his mandibles in what the translator rendered as laughter. "Your species has existed for 300,000 years, Velthar said. Many here have histories spanning millions of years. You speak of medical advances, yet you still suffer from diseases we eliminated eons ago. You offer technology, yet everything you possess is derived from basic principles any child in the collective learns. You are enthusiastic, we grant you that. But enthusiasm without substance is merely noise." Other council members made sounds of agreement. A crystalline being named Quarren, who served as trade minister, spoke next. "The human proposals are noted and filed. Now, regarding your assigned duties. We have compiled a list of tasks suitable for Tier 7 species." The list appeared on Dae-jung's datapad. Waste reclamation in hazardous zones. resource extraction near unstable stellar phenomena, test subjects for experimental technologies pending safety certification, maintenance of automated systems in regions deemed too dangerous for valuable personnel. Ji-Wan went pale as she read. These are jobs with extremely high casualty rates. They are duties appropriate to your tier, Quarren responded. All species must contribute according to their abilities. Your species reproduces quickly and has shown remarkable resilience to hostile environments. These tasks suit your strengths. Captain Hyun-sik stood. With respect, Council Prime, these assignments will result in significant loss of human life. We request safer alternatives. Request noted, Velthar said dismissively. Next item of business. Over the following weeks, Daejung tried repeatedly to schedule meetings with council members. Each request was acknowledged and then ignored. When he managed to intercept Trade Minister Quarren in a corridor, the crystalline being looked through him as if he didn't exist. Your persistence is admirable but futile, Quarren finally said. Accept your place. Perhaps, in a few thousand years, your species will develop something of value. Hyun-sik brought worse news from the docking levels. He'd witnessed how other species treated human workers. They were given the most dangerous jobs without proper equipment. When a human worker was injured in a docking accident, medical teams took 40 minutes to respond. For a Valkyrian worker injured the same day, response time was 3 minutes. They see us as expendable, Hyun-sik said quietly during a private meeting in their quarters. Ji-Wan had been compiling data. I've analyzed our classification. Biologically average means they think we're nothing special. Culturally primitive means they dismiss everything we've created. Technologically derivative means they believe we've invented nothing original. They've decided who we are without knowing us. Daejung looked at the formal protest he'd been drafting. Words on a screen. He submitted it anyway, following proper diplomatic channels. 3 days later, he received an automated response confirming his protest had been added to the official record. No meeting, no discussion, just acknowledgement that his words existed somewhere in a database. That evening, Daejung stood again at the observation deck, watching ships come and go. Large vessels from important species received priority docking and ceremonial welcomes. Human ships waited. Human voices went unheard. Human lives were considered cheap. He thought about Earth, about the millions of people who had celebrated humanity's acceptance into the galactic community. They had dreamed of friendship among the stars, of learning and growing alongside ancient civilizations. Instead, they had found contempt. We made a mistake coming here, Hyun-sik said, joining him at the viewport. Perhaps, Daejung replied, or perhaps they made a mistake in how they received us. Neither man knew it yet, but those words would echo through the years to come. The galaxy was vast, ancient, and powerful, but it was also blind. And blindness, even in the mighty, eventually carries a price. 8 years passed slowly for humanity in the Galactic Collective. 8 years of learning that contempt could become routine, that disregard could become policy, that being invisible was sometimes worse than being hated. Taeho ran the mining operation on Outpost Viridian 9. The planet orbited a dying star that spat radiation like a sick man coughing blood. The collective needed rare minerals from Viridian 9's core. No other species wanted the job, so humans got the contract. The pay was decent, but the cost was high. Another cave-in on level 6, his assistant reported one morning. 4 dead, 7 injured. Taeho closed his eyes. That made 43 deaths this year. The collective had promised proper shielding equipment 3 years ago. The equipment never arrived. When Taeho filed complaints, he received responses explaining that the shielding was in production and would ship soon. Always soon. Never now. He visited the injured in the medical bay. Sora, their medical officer, worked with equipment that was outdated by collective standards. Modern medical technology existed that could heal radiation damage in hours. Humans weren't given access to it. Too expensive for Tier 7 species, the official explanation stated. Sora kept detailed records of every injury, every death, every case of radiation poisoning. She filed reports with collective health authorities every month. The reports were marked as received and archived. No one ever responded with questions or assistance. The data went into a system and disappeared like water into sand. "Do you think anyone actually reads these?" she asked Taiho one evening. "I think they count on us being too tired to keep filing them," he replied. Across the sector, Songmin was learning a different kind of lesson. He was young, brilliant, and he'd spent 3 years developing a breakthrough in energy shielding technology. The math was elegant, the application was practical, and the potential uses were limitless. Better ship defenses, safer habitats, protection against stellar radiation. He presented his research to the Collective Science Council with hope in his heart. The council members listened politely. They asked technical questions. They seemed impressed. Sangmin left the presentation feeling like maybe, finally, humanity had something the galaxy would value. 6 weeks later, he saw his technology again. The Velkarian species had patented it under their name. The equations were identical. The applications were exactly what Sangmin had proposed. But according to the official records, the Velkarian research team had developed this independently. The fact that their development came weeks after Songmin's presentation was labeled coincidence. Songmin filed a formal complaint. The response came from the same council that had heard his presentation. The Velkarian research shows proper development history and documentation. Human claims of prior invention lack sufficient proof. Furthermore, it is improbable that a Tier 7 species could develop such sophisticated technology independently. The matter is closed. The translator said, improbable. Sangmin heard, impossible. The galaxy had decided humans couldn't be inventors, so any invention must be theft or luck or mistake. Never genuine achievement. Nari spent her days navigating collective bureaucracy. She was a diplomat, trained to be patient and persistent. She needed both qualities because getting a meeting with anyone important took months. She would submit requests through proper channels. Dates would be proposed, then postponed. Emergency sessions would suddenly conflict with her appointments. Officials would be unexpectedly called away just before scheduled meetings. When she finally got FaceTime with collective representatives, they listened with the attention of people waiting for permission to leave. Her concerns about human worker safety were noted. Her requests for technology access were filed for review. Her proposals for cultural exchange were thanked and forgotten. "They treat us like we're background noise," she confided to Ambassador Daejung during one of his visits to her office. Daejung had aged in 8 years. His hair had gone gray, and lines creased his face. "They treat us exactly as they intend to. We are tools to them. Tools don't need meetings or consideration. They need assignments." Human merchants learned the same lesson in the trade sectors. A standard tariff for most species was 2%. For humans, it was 6%. When human traders questioned this, officials explained it was a risk assessment fee based on humanity's limited trade history. The fact that humanity's trade history was limited because they'd only been in the collective for 8 years was apparently irrelevant. Meanwhile, collective media discovered that humans made excellent entertainment. Not as equals or interesting aliens, but as comic relief. Shows featured bumbling human characters who misunderstood simple concepts. News segments portrayed humans as primitive but eager primitives, like smart children who needed guidance. Dramas cast human actors as servants, workers, and background characters. Never heroes. Never leaders. Never important. The rescue changed nothing, though it should have changed everything. A space station near the Velcor system suffered catastrophic failure. Life support was failing, and 3,000 collective citizens needed immediate evacuation. Human ships were closest. Captain Hyun-sik diverted every available vessel. For 18 hours, human crews worked without sleep. They rescued Velkarian families, crystalline scholars, insectoid workers, and dozens of other species. When the station finally collapsed, all 3,000 citizens were safe. Hyun-sik's crew had saved everyone. The collective media barely mentioned it. One paragraph in news feeds, thanking rescue services without specifying humans. Meanwhile, when a Velkarian pilot rescued 12 people from a shuttle accident the following month, The pilot received medals, interviews, and galaxy-wide celebration. Did you see this? Jiwon showed Daejung the news comparison. 3,000 lives versus 12. We get one paragraph. They get parades. We are learning valuable lessons, Daejung said quietly. Lessons about value and visibility, about respect and recognition. Are we learning how to get them to see us differently? Jiwon asked. No, Daejung replied. We're learning that some people choose blindness, and you cannot force the blind to see. The 8th year brought Daejung to a decision. He drafted a long message to Earth's government. He detailed everything. The deaths from inadequate safety equipment, the stolen technology, the impossible bureaucracy, the casual contempt, the invisible labor humans performed while receiving no recognition or respect. He ended the message with a recommendation. We need to reconsider our membership in the Galactic Collective. We joined seeking partnership. We found exploitation. We offered friendship. We received indifference. We gave our labor, our lives, and our innovations. We received nothing but contempt disguised as policy. 3 months later, Earth's response arrived. They were sending a new ambassador. Someone younger. Someone who hadn't spent 8 years being slowly crushed by institutional disregard. His name was Jinwoo, and his reputation suggested he was less patient than Daejung. On his last day before returning to Earth, Daejung took one final walk through Nexus Prime's public corridors. He watched species intermingle, conducting business and building relationships. He saw respect exchanged, partnerships formed, and genuine collaboration happening, just not with humans. A young human worker passed him, shoulders slumped from exhaustion. She wore a gray Tier 7 badge and carried equipment to repair some system in some forgotten corner of the station. She was invisible to the collective citizens who walked past her. Invisible and expendable. Daejung thought about the mines on Viridian 9, about Songmin's stolen research, about Nari's pointless meetings, about 3,000 lives saved and barely acknowledged, about 8 years of trying to earn respect from people who had decided humans didn't deserve it. The galaxy was vast and ancient and full of wonders, but it was also capable of remarkable blindness. And blindness, Daejung had learned, was sometimes a choice. The collective had chosen not to see humanity's value. They had chosen to see only servants and subjects, tools and toys. Daejung wondered what would happen when those tools decided they'd had enough. When the servants walked away, when the invisible became unavailable. He boarded the ship home with that thought on his mind. Behind him, the Galactic Collective continued its routines, unaware that somewhere in its vast bureaucracy, a change was coming. The tools were about to stop working, and no one had prepared for what came next. Ambassador Jinwoo was different from Daejung in important ways. He was younger, yes, but more than that, he was done with patience. He'd read every report from the last 8 years. He'd seen the death counts, the stolen research, and the casual cruelty disguised as procedure. He arrived at Nexus Prime with no illusions about what humanity faced. They will test you, Daejung warned him during the transition meeting. They will make you wait, ignore your requests, and dismiss your concerns. They've perfected the art of disrespect. I won't be here long enough for that, Jinwoo replied. I'm not here to beg for scraps. I'm here to make a point. That point came sooner than anyone expected. The Collective Science Directorate ran a research station near Tarsus 3, a human colony world home to 50,000 people. The station conducted experiments with dark matter, trying to develop new faster-than-light technologies. The research was dangerous, which is why the station was positioned in a remote location. What the scientists didn't do was inform the nearby human colony about the risks. On a Tuesday morning colony time, the experiment went wrong. Ki-tae was a farmer on Tarsus 3. He grew crops in hydroponic domes and raised his 2 daughters in a community that felt like the frontier settlements of old Earth. Life was simple and good. Then the sky started tearing. The spatial rift began small, a shimmer in space visible from the colony's observation posts. Within minutes, it grew. Dark matter reactions cascaded out of control, and the rift expanded like a wound in reality. It pulled at everything nearby, bending light and warping gravity. The colony's emergency systems activated. Alarms screamed. 50,000 people had minutes to evacuate or die. Distress calls went out on all frequencies. This is Tarsus 3. We have a spatial rift expanding toward our position. We need immediate evacuation support. Repeat, we need immediate evacuation. 4 collective vessels were within response range. 3 were science ships from the research station. 1 was a Valkyrion transport. All 4 received the distress call clearly. The 3 science ships immediately began evacuating the research station's personnel. 200 collective scientists, their data, and their equipment. The evacuation was efficient and professional. Within 20 minutes, all collective personnel were safely away from the danger zone. Then the science ships left. They jumped to faster-than-light speed and abandoned the system. The Valkyrion transport received the human distress call. The captain acknowledged receipt. Then the transport proceeded on its original course, away from Tarsus 3. When questioned later, the captain explained that his ship wasn't equipped for large-scale evacuation, and his priority was the cargo he was already transporting. Kitai gathered his daughters and ran for the evacuation centers. The rift was visible now, a dark tear in the sky growing larger every minute. It pulled at the atmosphere, creating winds that knocked people off their feet. Buildings groaned under impossible stresses. In orbit, human ships began arriving. Not military vessels, those were too far away. These were civilian ships. Cargo haulers, passenger transports, even private yachts. Anyone who could reach Tarsus 3 came at maximum speed. Captain Hyunsik commanded the rescue operation from the Persistence. His voice stayed calm as he coordinated dozens of ships. Delta Wing, prioritize the northern settlements. Beta Wing, focus on the medical complexes. We need every transport pod operational. The ships dove into atmosphere that was being torn apart by gravitational forces. Human pilots flew through conditions that would have grounded any sane person. They landed in whatever space they could find, loaded whoever could reach them, and launched back to orbit seconds before the rift consumed the landing zones. Kai-Tae got his daughters onto a cargo hauler that was loading people like grain. The pilot, a woman named Hana, had flown through debris and gravitational shears to reach them. Her ship was damaged and shaking, but she kept taking more people. "We fit 12 more," she shouted over the screaming wind. "Hurry!" The rift grew. It consumed the southern continent in a flash of dark light. 20,000 people died in seconds. Kite watched from orbit as the land where his farm had stood simply ceased to exist, replaced by the terrible nothing of the rift. For 4 hours, human ships fought physics and time. They saved 12,000 people. 38,000 died, including children sleeping in their beds, elderly in care centers, and farmers like Kite who'd built lives in the colonial soil. When the rift finally stabilized and collapsed, Tarsus 3 was gone. The planet remained, but it was a dead rock with its atmosphere stripped away and its surface scoured clean. The Galactic Collective launched an investigation. It took them 3 weeks to produce a report. The report acknowledged the disaster, expressed regret for the loss of life, and concluded that the research station had followed all proper safety protocols. The fact that those protocols didn't include warning nearby colonies was apparently not relevant. Jinwoo demanded a hearing before the full Galactic Council. For once, they gave him a time slot. Perhaps they felt some obligation to address the disaster. Or perhaps they wanted to make their position clear. Kitai testified. He'd asked Jinwoo for permission to speak, and the ambassador had agreed immediately. Kitai stood before the council of 800 species and told them what he'd seen. He showed footage from the evacuation. Collective ships leaving with their own people while ignoring human distress calls. The Valkyrion transport, acknowledging the emergency and then flying away. "My daughters are alive because humans came for us," Kaite said. His voice was steady but his hands shook. Civilian pilots risked their lives. A cargo hauler captain died when her ship broke apart during re-entry, but she'd saved 40 people first. We saved 12,000 with civilian ships and courage. You saved zero. Your people caused this disaster, and when we needed help, you left us to die. The council chamber was silent. Then Council Prime Velthar spoke. The Tarsus incident was unfortunate, he said. The translation software rendered his tone as regretful, but his mandibles didn't move in the pattern that indicated genuine emotion. The research station followed all established protocols. The evacuation of station personnel was proper procedure. It is regrettable that the human colony was in proximity to the experiment, but space is vast and incidents occur. Perhaps humanity should consider establishing colonies in safer regions, away from important research facilities. Jinwoo stood slowly. Every eye in the chamber turned to him. Safer regions, he repeated. You've assigned us to the most dangerous regions in collective space for 8 years. You've put us in radiation zones, near unstable stars, and beside hostile territories. You've given us the tasks no one else wants, with equipment that doesn't work and support that never comes. And when your experiments destroy our home and kill 38,000 of our people, you suggest we should have chosen a better neighborhood? Ambassador, your grief is understandable, but Velthar began. We're not finished, Jinwoo interrupted. In the collective, interrupting a council prime was a significant breach of protocol. You want to know what's unfortunate? It's not the deaths. You don't care about deaths. You proved that when you left us to die. What's unfortunate is that you never understood what you had. You had a species willing to work the jobs you wouldn't touch, willing to risk what you wouldn't risk, willing to save your people while you saved yourselves, and you treated us like tools, like cheap tools you could discard when they broke. Trade Minister Quarren spoke up. Your emotional response is noted, Ambassador, but this council must consider the broader context. Species come and go. The collective endures. Humanity will learn its place or find its extinction. This is the nature of galactic civilization. Jinwoo stared at Quarren for a long moment. Then he looked at Velthar. Then he looked at the 800 species watching this exchange. You have made your choice, Jinwoo said quietly. We will make ours. He walked out of the council chamber. Kite followed him. Behind them, the council moved on to the next item of business. The Tarsus incident was closed. Humanity's complaint was filed and forgotten. But something had changed. Jinwoo sent a message to Earth that night. It was simple and direct. Request immediate vote on collective membership. Recommendation, withdrawal. They will never see us as anything but tools. It's time to stop pretending otherwise. 3 weeks later, Earth's government voted. 89% in favor of immediate withdrawal from the Galactic Collective. The news reached Nexus Prime during a regular council session. Commander Yoonji received her orders the same day. Recall all human vessels, close all human facilities, and bring everyone home. The withdrawal would take 2 years to complete properly. It would be the largest coordinated movement in human history. Jinwoo submitted humanity's formal withdrawal notice through proper channels. He received an automated acknowledgement. No emergency session was called. No one asked humanity to reconsider. The collective had decided long ago that humans didn't matter. They were about to learn how wrong they were. President Dong-hyun addressed humanity from Earth's capital. His speech was broadcast to every human colony, station, and ship in collective space. For 8 years, we tried to be good members of the galactic community. We worked hard. We followed their rules. We gave our labor and our lives. In return, we received contempt. When our people died, we received regrets but no change. When we invented, our ideas were stolen. When we needed help, we were ignored. Today, we come home. Not in defeat, but in dignity. We will build our own future, on our own terms. The withdrawal begins immediately. The Great Withdrawal, as historians would later call it, was the largest coordinated effort humanity had ever attempted. 2 years to close embassies, evacuate colonies, recall ships, and bring home everyone scattered across collective space. Commander Yoonji managed the logistics like a military campaign, which it essentially was. A campaign of organized departure. The collective barely noticed at first. Humans were invisible background, after all. A few officials noted the withdrawal notices but filed them without concern. Tier 7 species came and went. The collective would endure. Yuna was a trade coordinator working in the collective's commerce division. She'd spent 8 years tracking human economic activities because someone had to maintain the records. As humans began withdrawing, she started compiling data for the closure reports. What she found shocked her. Humans handled 34% of all hazardous waste reclamation in collective space. Not because they were good at it, but because no other species wanted to do it. The jobs were dangerous, disgusting, and unglamorous. Humans had taken those jobs because they needed the contracts. As humans withdrew, the waste accumulated. Space stations that had been clean for years suddenly found themselves dealing with biological contamination and toxic byproducts. The collective scrambled to find replacements, but other species demanded much higher pay for work they considered beneath them. 6 months into the withdrawal, health crises began emerging on major stations. Waste systems backed up. Contamination spread. Species who'd never given the matter a thought suddenly understood that someone had been handling the galaxy's garbage all along. Minji had been a liaison officer tracking human activities across multiple sectors. She compiled a comprehensive report that no one had asked for, because she wanted people to understand what was being lost. Humans operated 70% of deep space rescue operations. They flew ships into dangerous regions to save stranded vessels, responded to distress calls in hostile territories, and risked their lives for strangers who treated them with contempt. They did it because they believed life was valuable, even lives that didn't value them back. As humans withdrew, rescue response times tripled. A civilian transport broke down in an asteroid field. The nearest collective rescue ship was 8 hours away. In the old days, a human ship would have been there in 2 hours. But those ships were gone, heading home. 73 people died waiting for rescue that arrived too late. The pattern repeated across the galaxy. A research vessel stranded near a black hole. A colony ship suffering life support failure. A diplomatic shuttle caught in a solar storm. Every time the response was slower. Every time people died who would have lived if humans had still been there. In frontier regions, the situation was worse. Human medical volunteers had been providing free care in 200 underserved collective worlds. They'd set up clinics, trained local staff, and treated diseases without asking for payment or recognition. They did it because healing was what good doctors did. As the volunteers withdrew, medical care collapsed in those regions. A plague broke out on 3 worlds simultaneously. In the past, human medical teams would have responded immediately. Now, collective medical authorities debated jurisdiction and funding for 6 weeks while thousands died. Human engineers maintained critical systems in 50 space stations. Not the glamorous systems, but the foundational ones. Life support, gravity generators, atmospheric processors. The jobs that required someone to crawl through maintenance tunnels, work double shifts, and fix problems no one else wanted to touch. As those engineers left, systems started failing. A space station near Velthar Prime lost gravity for 3 hours because no one knew how to fix an old regulator. Humans had maintained it for years, but they'd never been asked to train replacements. No one had thought humans were important enough to learn from. In agricultural regions, 30 worlds faced food shortages. Human agricultural techniques had been quietly solving problems the collective didn't even know existed. Crop rotation methods, soil enhancement, water conservation. Simple techniques that worked, implemented by human farmers who shared knowledge freely. As humans withdrew, crop yields dropped. Worlds that had been self-sufficient suddenly needed food imports. The collective's agricultural experts tried to understand what humans had been doing, but the humans were gone, and their methods weren't in any official database. They'd just done the work without seeking credit. Yuna brought her findings to Trade Minister Quarren 8 months into the withdrawal. Her report was detailed and damning. It showed exactly how much invisible infrastructure humanity had provided. "This is concerning," Quarren admitted. The crystalline being's usual dismissive tone was absent. "Can we negotiate with them to maintain some services?" "I don't think they're interested in negotiating," Yuna replied. She was right. Ambassador Jin Woo received Quarren's official request for a meeting. The trade minister wanted to discuss humanity's return to the collective with improved terms. Perhaps Tier 5 status instead of Tier 7. Better contracts, more recognition. Jin Woo met with Quarren in a small private room on Nexus Prime. He was there to oversee the final closure of the human embassy. The meeting was brief. "We've reviewed our relationship with humanity," Quarren began. "We acknowledge there were misunderstandings. We're prepared to offer significantly improved terms if humanity would reconsider withdrawal." "Misunderstandings," Jinwoo repeated. "Is that what you call it? 8 years of contempt, 38,000 dead on Tarsus, stolen technology, ignored safety concerns. That's what you call misunderstandings? The past is regrettable, but we must consider the future. The collective needs human labor," Jinwoo interrupted. "You're not sorry for how you treated us. You're sorry that we're leaving. You're not apologizing for contempt. You're panicking about losing your janitors." Quarren's crystalline structure flickered in a way that indicated distress. "Please, Ambassador, be reasonable. We can negotiate terms that benefit both parties." Jin Woo stood. "We were never truly members. We were tools you used and discarded. We will not be tools again. This meeting is over." He walked out, leaving Quarren alone with the realization that some damage cannot be repaired with better contracts. The withdrawal continued. Human ships formed massive convoys heading back to Earth space. Colonies were dismantled or abandoned. Embassies closed. Within 18 months, 90% of humans were gone from collective space. The effects cascaded. Space stations struggled with basic maintenance. Rescue operations failed repeatedly. Medical systems collapsed in frontier regions. Waste accumulated. Infrastructure decayed. And slowly, species began blaming each other for the crisis. The Velkarian should handle waste reclamation, some said. They're technologically advanced. "Why should we do work beneath our station?" the Velkarian replied. "Let the crystalline beings handle it." Conflicts emerged. 3 regional wars broke out over resources that humans had once helped distribute fairly. The collective, which had seemed so unified in its contempt for humanity, began fracturing under the pressure of actually doing the work humans had done. Commander Eunji oversaw the return of the last human ship from collective space. The Persistence, Captain Hyun-sik's old command, was the final vessel to leave. As it crossed into Earth's territory, she sent a message to President Dong-hyun. "Mission complete. All humans accounted for. We're home." Behind them, the Galactic Collective dealt with the consequences of treating tools as expendable. Ahead of them, humanity faced an uncertain future, independent and alone. But alone with dignity was better than together with contempt. Every returning human understood that truth. They'd learned it in mines and hospitals, in council chambers and disaster zones. They'd learned it the hard way, but they'd learned it well. The galaxy could keep its ancient civilizations and vast territories. Humanity would keep something more valuable, its self-respect. And that, they'd discovered, was worth any price. 10 years after humanity's withdrawal, the Galactic Collective was not the same institution. The fractures had spread like cracks in old glass, and what had seemed unbreakable now felt fragile. Hyejin was Earth's new ambassador, but her title was different from Daejung's or Jinwoo's. She was ambassador to independent species, not to the collective, because humanity wasn't alone anymore. 17 species had watched humanity's withdrawal and learned from it. They saw how the collective treated those it considered lesser. They saw contempt disguised as policy, and they decided that dignity mattered more than membership. One by one, they left. Small species mostly, species that had been classified as Tier 4 or 5 or 6. Species that did important work but received little recognition. They withdrew and formed the independent alliance with Earth at its center. The alliance was different from the collective. Smaller, yes. Less ancient, certainly. But it operated on principles the collective had forgotten. Respect, mutual support, recognition of value in all forms. When the alliance members helped each other, they said thank you. When mistakes were made, they were acknowledged. When someone contributed, they were honored. The collective watched this with growing unease. Losing humanity had been manageable, or so they'd thought. Losing 18 species was a crisis. Economic depression spread through collective space. Species that had relied on human labor and the labor of other departed species suddenly faced impossible costs. No one wanted to do dangerous work for reasonable pay. The jobs that needed doing went undone, and systems started breaking down. 3 regional wars erupted. The Velkarion and the crystalline beings fought over mining rights in territories humans had once managed peacefully. The wars were short but brutal, and they proved something important. The collective's unity had been shallow, maintained by having humans to look down on together. Then the plague came. It started on the Velkarion homeworld, a disease that attacked their complex nervous systems, causing paralysis and death. The Velkarion medical establishment tried everything, but nothing worked. The plague spread across their colonies, killing millions. 10 years earlier, the Velkarion had stolen Sangmin's energy shielding research. They'd claimed it as their own and profited from it. Now they needed medical technology, and they discovered something terrible. Humans had been working on neurological medicine for decades, technology that could have treated the plague. But humans had stopped sharing their research when they left. Sangmin was now the director of Earth's Advanced Research Institute. The Velkarion sent desperate messages asking for help. Sangmin read them and remembered presenting his research to a council that laughed at him. He remembered seeing his work stolen and being told humans couldn't possibly invent anything sophisticated. He brought the messages to President Dong Hyun. "They're dying. We have medicine that could help." "Do you want to help them?" Dong Hyun asked. Sangmin was quiet for a long time. "I'm a scientist, I'm a healer, but I'm also human, and I remember what they did to us." "Then the choice is yours," Dong Hyun said. "We don't make decisions about mercy based on whether it's deserved. We make them based on who we are." Sangmin sent the medical data. Not as a gift, but as a sale. The Velkarion paid Earth's price and received the cure. Millions of lives were saved. No thank you was offered, but no thanks were expected. This wasn't about gratitude. It was about humans being who they chose to be, regardless of how others treated them. Council Prime. Velthar watched his civilization fracture. 10 years of crisis had aged him in ways his species rarely experienced. The collective was breaking apart and he couldn't stop it. Species blamed each other. Resources were scarce. Trust was gone. He called an emergency council session and made an unprecedented proposal. Send a formal delegation to Earth. Offer humanity full Tier 1 status. Give them seats on the council. Provide reparations for Tarsus and all past grievances. Beg them to return if necessary. The vote was unanimous. Desperation made even the proud willing to humble themselves. The delegation arrived at Earth 3 months later. Council Prime Velthar led it personally, along with Trade Minister Quarren and representatives from 20 major species. They came with documents offering everything humanity had ever asked for and more. President Dong Hyun received them in Earth's diplomatic hall. Ambassador Hyejin sat beside him. Sangmin was there as well, representing Earth's scientific community. The meeting was broadcast across both Earth and collective space. Velthar spoke first. His translator rendered his words carefully. "We come with apologies. We offer reparations. We recognize that the collective failed humanity in every way that matters. We ask for another chance. Humanity would enter at Tier 1 status. Full council representation. Complete technology sharing. Reparations for all past damages, including Tarsus 3. We need you to return." The word need hung in the air. Not want, not request, need. Dong Hyun looked at the delegation. Ancient species, powerful civilizations, beings who had existed for millions of years. All of them looking at humans with something that might have been respect, but was probably just desperation. "You taught us we were alone," Dong Hyun said quietly. "You taught us that no one would help when we needed it. You taught us that our lives were cheap and our work was invisible. You taught us that dignity had to be chosen, not given. These were valuable lessons and we learned them well." "We were wrong," Velthar said. The admission seemed to physically pain him. "We were blind to your value. We are asking for forgiveness and renewal. Hyejin spoke next. Forgiveness is possible, but renewal is not. You can't restore what you never built. There was no partnership to renew. There was exploitation and contempt. You're not asking us to return to something good that was broken. You're asking us to enter something that was never good in the first place. Quarren tried next. Name your terms. Whatever humanity requires, we will provide. Our terms are simple, Donghyun replied. We will not rejoin the Galactic Collective, not at Tier 1, not at any tier. That institution showed us who it truly is. We believe it. Then what do you want? Velthar asked. His voice carried something close to despair. We want to move forward, Hyejin answered, not backward. We will establish trade agreements with the collective, limited and carefully managed. We will provide humanitarian aid in crisis situations because that's who we are. But these will be agreements between separate entities, not membership in your organization. Sangmin added, We've built something better. The Independent Alliance operates on principles you abandoned: respect, recognition, mutual support. We won't leave that to return to an organization that values us only when it needs us. The delegation left empty-handed. The broadcasts showed Velthar's defeat clearly. He had come offering everything and learned that some things cannot be bought or negotiated. The collective continued its slow decline. It didn't collapse, but it never recovered its former unity or strength. Species cooperated out of necessity rather than respect. The absence of humanity and the other departed species was felt every day in 1,000 small ways. Meanwhile, the Independent Alliance grew, not into an empire or superpower, but into something different, a coalition of species who treated each other as equals. Who said thank you? Who helped because help was needed, not because helping was profitable? 5 years after the delegation's failed mission, Velthar did something unprecedented. He sent a personal message to Earth, not an official communication. Just words from one leader to another. I finally watched the footage from Tarsus 3, the message said. All of it. I watched human ships dive into conditions that should have killed them. I watched civilians become heroes. I watched your people save strangers who would never thank them. And I realized what we lost wasn't your labor or your technology. We lost the chance to learn from you. We lost the opportunity to be better by being with you. The galaxy is dimmer without humanity in it. Not because you were bright, but because we chose darkness, and you chose to leave rather than accept it. That was the right choice. I'm sorry we made it necessary. Hyejin read the message aloud to President Donghyun. Do we respond? Yes, Donghyun said. Tell him we received his message. Tell him we appreciate the honesty. And tell him that we hope the collective learns from this, not for our sake, but for the sake of species that will come after us. The galaxy is vast enough for multiple ways of living. They should choose theirs carefully. The message was sent. Whether Velthar heeded its wisdom, history would judge. In the end, humanity's story in the galaxy became something unexpected. Not a tale of conquest or dominance. Not a story of revenge or triumph. Instead, it became a lesson about value and recognition, about respect earned and dignity chosen, about walking away from situations that diminish you, even when walking away is hard. The collective had disregarded humanity, and the price was paid not in destruction but in loss. Loss of potential, loss of partnership, loss of the chance to build something better together. And when humans walked away, the galaxy wept. Not loudly, but in the quiet ways that matter. In systems that failed. In lives that could have been saved. In possibilities that died unborn. In the understanding, too late, that some things are only truly valued when they're gone. Humanity thrived in its independence. The Independent Alliance grew stronger. And somewhere in the collective's vast archives, records remained of the species that had come seeking partnership and left having learned that dignity could never be negotiated, only chosen. The galaxy was vast and ancient and full of wonders. But it had learned something from the young species it had dismissed. Some lessons can only be taught by walking away, and some prices are paid in understanding what you had only after you've lost it forever.